also been an adjunct professor at PSU, and I found out tonight he's huge into search and rescue. So I have no idea in what capacity at this point, but I do want to know more about that. In the meantime, though, we're going to hear a little bit about KinderCare.
All right. Thanks. I'm going to do this coffee shop style. Just sit on.
Where's your guitar?
That's coming at 8:30. Tim Martin, His Name Shall Breathe, playing here at 8:30. Great friend of mine from the old days. He's from Salem. He's a local boy. All right. Well, thank you for coming out to Camp Optimization to spend your design week Thursday. I'm sure there's a bunch of open houses and stuff out there that we're competing. So apparently personalization was the top of your list for some reason or another. So in the spirit of analytics, let's do a quick survey. Who here is doing some kind of personalization with their brand right now? Cool, cool. How many of you don't but are here because you need to? Or somebody's telling you you need to. Good. How many of you think that people asking icebreaker questions at the beginning of a talk is cheesy? All right, and then lastly, who watches Homeland? All right, I was up way too late watching Homeland last night, so if I start trailing off and falling asleep, just throw something at me. It's riveting. Great, well thanks for the introduction. I don't think I need to introduce myself anymore. I work at Connective DX. We've been around since 1997. We're old enough to rent a car now. And I've been there for 10 years, which is kind of an eternity for an agency, but I've gotten to start, I started at Web Trends and Analytics, and then started working with this little company called Urchin. I don't know if you've heard, they're called Google now, and Analytics. And then started getting more into optimization, and then personalization is really just the extension of optimization testing, but with a little bit more mindfulness into the customer journey and knowing who you're personalizing for at a more one-to-one level. So that's kind of what we're here to talk about. Connective DX does a lot of the same stuff that you just mentioned. We do digital experience strategy, design. We have a great practice in technology and content management systems. And digital enablement is partnering with executives to really look at customer centricity and expand a brand. Really, we just believe that brands that are loved win, and so customer experience is really what we're all about. One of the brands that we work with, have been working with for, oh man, probably 8 years now, almost 6-8 years, is KinderCare. And they're local. They're up on over by Lloyd Center. And this last year, we really dove in deep into trying to get personalization off the ground for them. So, as many of you know, since you raised your hands, personalization is kind of daunting. People are trying to get into it, and you know it's supposed to be happening. All the big brands are doing it or say they're doing it. And so we really just kind of came to the table and said, okay, what are the outcomes that we're looking for to say that personalization is the thing that's worth investing in here? And started with a pilot. So tonight, I'm going to walk you through some of the strategies that we use to launch personalization at KinderCare, the framework that we came up with. It's not a recipe. It's really just kind of an example of approach that we used that worked. And hopefully it's inspiration for you who are trying to make this work, that you can take pieces of this and apply it to the way that your company needs optimization. So first of all, we really just wanted to come up with a framework so that they could have an internal case study. The marketing team at KinderCare wanted to share internally and show off that the investment they made in the Sitecore content management system was worthwhile. They wanted to explore the capabilities of a fairly new practice that they were trying to adopt. They had a lot of opportunity to learn more about their customers that they didn't know before. And then ultimately, of course, they wanted to increase engagement and conversion. That was, that's where we get down to the KPIs there is we need more leads and we want more engagement. So how can personalization do that for us? So we came up with a very simple framework for personalization strategy. We're going to do customer insights. We're going to grab everything we know about our customers. We're going to look at all the data from what the customers have already told us about themselves, doing surveys to help fill in the gaps, doing segmentation to see what kinds of different types of people we have coming to our site, and then aligning is when we actually give them the experience they need because now we understand them. The experiment is basically personalization is just experimentation that's highly segmented. We want to validate that this works so that we can do it again. So we do it the same way that we'd run any other multivariate or A/B test. And then at the end, somebody needs to know this was worth their money, so we measure it. So this fairly simple model can be applied in the entire customer life cycle. If you think about the different marketing tactics or content strategy that you're doing or retention strategy, you can use personalization, the same exact framework inside of any phase of the life cycle. So this is pretty important in the way that we decided to go forward with the KinderCare work. Like anything, we started with a hypothesis. So we had an existing persona that was already luckily available for us. The persona is Amber. She's a mom. Believe it or not, most people on KinderCare's website are moms. So she has a lot of key tasks. Anybody here who's gone through the experience of finding daycare? We just did it recently, yeah. It's emotional. It's daunting. It's expensive. Everybody kind of has the same key tasks, but what we found and our hypothesis was that the way that people go about doing those is going to be varied by their mindset. We could have Amber come to the website 5 times over, but her mindset may be different. She may be trying to solve a different problem or answer a different question. And understanding the mindset of the same person at any time was the strategy that we used for KinderCare. So here's Amber. She's academic supermom. You might know a few of these in the Portland area. She's really concerned about education. She's very educated, young mom, and education and development is kind of the focus. I know when we started looking for daycare, we liked to call it school because it made it sound like it was worth the money. So yeah, we started with a persona. But a persona, if anybody's done design work before, a persona is interviewing a lot of people and then grinding all those people into one person. Personalization is the opposite. You're trying to do a one-to-one relationship. So starting with a persona is great. It's a really good way to begin exploring or mapping out who you need to deliver content for because it gets you your customer journeys. But what we did then is we actually went backwards and unpacked Amber's mindset and thought about all the questions that might be revolving around her head across that customer journey. So of course, we've made journey maps and KPIs and all the stuff that you've seen in personas before. But the key of this was that we needed to come out of it with something that we could personalize against. And so we came up with these 5 criteria. We call them mindsets. Again, we're really focused on one persona, one person. The mindsets is that you're development focused. Your question is that you're focused about getting your child to be a step ahead in their education. You're focused on your family situation. Your question is, does this work for our family right now? The way we work, our lifestyle, the family we want to be. The nurturer in us comes out a lot. The question of like, is my child going to be loved? Are they going to have fun? Are they going to have friends? What are they going to do without me? Then there's high touch. I just want to know that I have control over what's going on when my kid's not around. I want to know every detail about what's going to go on at KinderCare. And then value conscious, which is we have a budget. Our very first criteria is that we have to basically either eliminate or find places that we can afford. So you could do any of these during your journey of finding daycare. But what we needed to find out was what that person is thinking when they're on the website at that time. So, is this in the right order? Yeah. We went through all the content on our website. We're like, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to say, based off of the content, the pages that people are looking at, we think that that will tell us what somebody's mindset is. That was our hypothesis, that there was a correlation between what you're reading and what you're thinking. So the first task that we had to do was go through all of our content and refine it down into some categories. I think we ended up with 10, which is actually kind of hard to do when you've got hundreds of pages. Like you get 10 categories. And we went through and we scored every single page on the website into these 10 categories. You can kind of see here, they're pretty expected. This is kind of what you would think of if you went to a daycare website. But the trick is to actually weight the page according to how much of each type of content it represents. Because then we think when somebody gets there, that was what they were interested in. So here is kind of an example of how we went through and did that. And then we found out that there's about 3 pages per visit average, even though people come back over and over. And we ended up coming up with this kind of average visit score, that in any average visit, that the score of the type of content could be 79. We'll come back to that later when we get into the math. The other thing about this is that we didn't score any pages that were transactional, because those are pages everybody's supposed to go to. They don't really indicate what you're interested in, because they're not about a specific type of content. They're just the one place you go, the About Us page, the center's details pages, etc. Okay, so you can like make gestures and stuff if this is too nerdy. But I did this presentation a few months ago and everybody asked me about the math and I didn't know the answers, so I went back and did it just in case. I have a very smart guy sitting next to me at work who helped me through the statistical model. But essentially the question is, right, is there a correlation between what people see and what people think? We're trying to get to mindset. We need to make sure that our hypothesis is right, that the content is representative of the mindset. So we did a survey. We had about 300 people in the survey, and we asked 2 questions. One question represented what they're most focused on at the moment, and the other is about the types of information they're looking for. These all align to the content categories, and these all align to the mindsets. So we did the survey, and then we got the data. We had to scrub through it, make sure we got out anybody who said that everything was not important. And we had to get rid of everybody who said that everything was most important, because essentially those things both mean that you didn't read the survey. And then we got an average score of 1.3. The next part is really important, which is that we needed to make sure this was statistically valid. So yeah, you can run a survey and you can get some anecdotal data and you can do stuff with that, and that's great. But since we're using this to model out a pretty sophisticated way of doing personalization, we ended up validating that there was statistical confidence in all the relationships between the answers. And then we found out what the expected score would be if somebody just visited random stuff. And then we found out what the weight was of somebody going to a certain set of content and how much that weighed towards them being in a mindset. So you can see that some things like the activities had a pretty low weight on development focus, whereas safety had a huge weight on development focus. So what that comes back to is these really pretty spider diagrams that make us look really smart. But when the actual work starts, you go into, in this case it was Sitecore. It's a content management system that has personalization built into it. You go in and actually now you have some actual scores. A lot of people have tried to do behavioral-based personalization, and they get to this part of the tool, they buy the thing, they log into the thing, they go in here, and they go, oh, what numbers am I supposed to put in here? And somebody looks at this, and they're like, Amber, she's like a 7 on activities. And I think she's kind of like probably an 11 on activities. And it's just conjecture, and if you're actually going to go and make content hypotheses and do testing on this, you actually want to be pretty confident that the numbers that you're choosing for your behavior are based in some kind of math. We probably didn't do the most sophisticated math in the world, but the important thing is that your model is based off of something that you can go back to improve. When somebody asks you, how did you know that, you can show your work. All right, so I'm actually going to stand up. Okay, so now we have to design some kind of experience. It's one thing to be able to know when somebody's on your site and you think you know who they are, but now what are we supposed to show Amber? What is it that gets her through her journey faster, better? So first we understand her. She's a prospective mom. She's seeking care. We knew that already because we did all the persona research. Then after she comes to the site, she sees 3 pages and we're observing her behavior. Because of our statistical model now, we actually can identify her. That's the key now. We couldn't do that before. Everybody was pretty anonymous. Nobody's logging in. We're like, okay, she's nurture focused. What can we tell her now that appeals to her mindset? Well, we know she's on this page, and her customer need is she wants to know how her kid is being cared for. Because of our knowledge of her customer journey and where she's at, now we're going to talk about staying connected with her teachers. That's how she's going to know her kid is getting cared for. The user task now is to talk to a center director and get a one-to-one relationship and learn about how she's going to know her kid's getting cared for. We're going to deliver an experience that speaks to her mindset. And then the plan is that she's going to submit a lead, and we're going to put that in analytics, and the marketing team is going to say, huzzah, personalization worked. So we did a proof of concept. We actually created a customized promo. It's personalized for Amber. She gets to a personalized version of the page for knowing your teachers. She finds a center, and she decides she wants to go talk to a center director and do a tour. So the numbers here, this is the results of an A/B test. You're pretty familiar with A/B tests probably. You run 2 things against each other, see which one works. We segmented, one was the control, and one was the personalized experience. These numbers look pretty good, right? So, okay, 4.5% engagement increase, 10.5% center details form submit. That's the conversion. Anybody have a hypothesis about why this actually wasn't a successful test? Yeah.
More qualified if they're willing to call.
qualified, okay. So this is the interesting thing. Oops. So this is a sample day. Oh, this is a little... There. This says sample day. This says stay connected. We thought more of Amber in this mindset would want to stay connected and click through and go through. This experience had a higher conversion rate, but this promo actually had a lower click-through rate. People who clicked through the sample day had a higher abandonment after this, and people who clicked through this had a lower, there was a lower volume of people who clicked through the personalized promo. So what we actually learned here was that the absence of a promo improved conversion rate. The absence of them wanting to click through this. So by measuring the final outcome of form submits, we initially missed the goal of that there's actually supposed to be more affinity towards this content, and there wasn't. So we needed to do another test. This didn't really validate that personalization was working or not working. This just validated that promos weren't a really good call to action for this experiment. So we went back and looked at our analytics. We said, okay, what pages are, or first, what mindsets have the lowest value? Like, we needed to figure out where to focus our efforts. So the first one was really just a proof of concept to see that mechanically it all worked. So we went to analytics, we said family focus and development focus are the highest volume, but they actually have the lowest per session goal value. So that opportunity, right? High volume, low value, it's a place to go. We then looked at which pages inside of those mindsets had the lowest value and said, oh, well, look at this. This our approach to education has a $9 page value. That's super low. But our approach to education, KinderCare, like, that's their selling point. Like we were talking about earlier, their educational philosophy is really what makes them stand out against other daycare situations. So that was immediately an opportunity for us to think about personalization and optimization. We did that for a couple other pages, and what that got us was, okay, now we have some focus. Before we just kind of spitball and we said, oh, let's just do promos. Promos are easy. Now we're focused on these specific pages that we know those two personas, those two mindsets are going to and are not converting on. So we have a new hypothesis, which is that the experience designed around the specific mindset would positively impact the conversion value for the audience on those pages. We did an A/B split test. A little different than in most cases. The split test that we did was not targeted towards our target audience. It was actually segmented by our target audience, which means we actually ran the test for everybody, and then when we did the analysis, we came back to see how it performed against not only the mindset we expected it to work for, but all the other ones, just in case there was something that we didn't know. So our first one, our childhood education teachers versus tips for building partnerships. This content approach was for our family focus mindset. The content was to emphasize that there was more value to the family in the relationship with teachers and less about the strengths of KinderCare and their expertise. So our tips for building partnerships, one, in some respects, family focus. It did. It had a 30% increase conversion rate and a 48% lift in goal value. So that was a win. That's what we expected. What we didn't expect was that this other segment was going to have an 86% conversion rate increase and a 246% lift in goal value. So that's why we ran it against all the audiences, so we could see what we didn't know. But so yeah, okay, this content approach actually worked for this audience, and we now know which audiences it didn't work for as well. We could kind of go back and surmise as to why, because they are different mindsets. So that's expected. And this content approach was for the development-focused, education-oriented mindset. The approach here was to give more specificity, more detail into the curriculum and into their teaching philosophy. So more charts, more drill downs. Here's a bio on their VP of Education. So in this case, our hypothesis was that the development-focused audience was going to actually get more value out of this, and this test did not prove that that content was the right content for that mindset. It did say high touch had a huge increase, 55% increase in goal conversion rate, value conscious 41%. So that's kind of where we come back and put our hypothesis hat back on and say, what was it about that content that aligned with this mindset that we didn't think about initially? Say, okay, well, high touch, it's a lot about control. Maybe this level of detail, maybe there's kind of a more is more theme with high touch. So we could come out with themes and test themes against mindsets. Values, same thing. If you're, like I was saying earlier, when we were trying to convince ourselves to pay for Montessori school, we called it school instead of daycare, and it made us feel better about spending money. So maybe in this value-conscious mindset, if you're thinking about it as an educational resource instead of daycare, you're more aligned with that content. So those are the kinds of conversations that we had after running these tests, so we could iterate, try new content types, and continue to try to refine matching content strategy to the mindsets. All right. Any questions on that? It's just a way of doing personalization based off of behavior. I think that the real important thing is that it's grounded in some kind of data that you can reproduce and show to your stakeholders how and why something happened. And then experimenting against all of your different personalization options first before you decide that if we just tested against the one that we thought, one would have worked and we wouldn't have learned anything about the others, and the other would have failed and we wouldn't have known anything about the others. So that was kind of the takeaway there in that strategy. Any questions about that? Cool. That was really neat. We got pretty far with that. We decided we were going to try to take it to the next level and see what kinds of other personalization we could do. It's just some inspiration. That behavioral targeting is one way to do it for anonymous visitors. Another way that we've been doing personalization is market tiers. So we gather tons of data about all the markets and kind of put them into a tier based off of the density, the private pay rate versus subsidies, median household income, search results, share of voice, and then model that out into 5 market